Welcome to another Lunch with Philip and Greg. Our guest today is Terry Curren. Terry is actually one of my longest standing friends in this country, one of my closest friends. So we know each other. We do a show together called the Terrence and Philip Show. And it, strangely enough, started out as lunch with Terry and I, and we decided to make a show out of it, and we've come full circle back to lunch.
Very interesting play of events.
So Terry, how did you get, where are you in your career now, and how did you get there?
I'm actually at a pretty good point because I now I'm actually at a point where I can choose who I personally work with.
Nice.
Yes. Yes. This is a big advantage. I started out in production a long time ago, worked my way up, and then eventually got into editing because I had done my own low-budget horror movie and I had to do the post on it, and so I got into editing and
you discovered that post was in air conditioning and shooting was not.
Yeah, it's honestly, well, I started out like a lot of people. I wanted to direct, and I really, really love the part where you're on set as a director. That part I really love. The problem solving and the creative juice that goes there, and just it's like high energy. It's the peak of what you can do in our industry as far as That's what's nice about production. The downside is if you want to be a director, you spend 4 or 5 years networking and kissing ass for every movie that you get to actually make, right? And I'm not one of those guys, so that kind of killed the whole thing. Once I realized that was what was involved, it was like, editing, on the other hand, you get that thrill, but you get it on your own, which is nice. I mean, so you can kind of do it on your own terms, especially if you're working on your own material. Working with clients' material can be, depending on the client. And then I eventually started doing finishing editing, just sort of slid into that, which led to color correction, that's what I primarily do now. I started my own company, Alpha Dogs, back in early 2000s, and that has allowed me, because I have other people working there, if there's a client I don't want to work with, I don't have to.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
It is.
Very good point to be in. And backing up a bit, I worked at a company called Matchframe. I was actually employee number 1 at Matchframe Video, which grew to, they were pretty large, and they had 68 employees, I think, when they finally caved in, but that was after I'd left. I was cutting news pieces for MTV News, which was a unique experience because unlike ABC, CBS, NBC, etc., MTV was a network that was founded on free programming. Right. They got all those music videos free, so they, when it came to actually doing their own productions, they have a real hard time shaking the mentality of free, and so they didn't hire trained people. They would basically they'd have a PA would be in the back of the room, one week, and the next week that PA was the producer in the back of the room, and you're just like, ah. So, yeah, and that became really painful, and that was when, I used to actually, if I knew I had an MTV session next week, my weekend would be ruined, because every time I would think about it, I'd get that knot in my stomach, and I was like, and I finally had one session with, a PA last week is now the producer in the back of the room, who was making me cut off beat, and it's music video stuff. They're making me cut off beat and doing everything wrong. And there's 2 modes you can be in when you're editing. You can be in creative mode, where I'm doing what I do, or I can go into button pusher mode. All right, if you want to just tell me everything, I'll whatever button. Just I can do either one, but I don't do really well when they go, well, give me creative, but they want button pushing, and then it's a collision. So, anyways, when I finished that piece, it was a miserable session for me. Client didn't know, but I'm in misery. At the end of the session, we had always put slates on, which the only people who are going to see the slates are the operators in New York, just back in tape days, right? So, and you had to put editor on there, and I just put Alan Smithy for the editor. And the PA/producer in the back of the room is like, wasn't that a movie? And I'm like, yeah, that was, never mind. It's an inside joke. Anyways, it was so horrible. I walked into scheduling at Matchframe and I said, I'm done. I'm never doing another MTV session. I don't care if you guys never book me again. I don't care if I never work again. I'm done. I just want, and then, you know, various levels of management all try to talk me into it. Because the worst part was the MTV people only wanted me. I'm the only editor they would work with. So that was it. I was that, and that was a turning point for me in my career when it's like life is too short. It's not worth being miserable, you know. So from that point forward, it's changed. And like I said, right now I'm in a position where I absolutely don't have to work with anybody I don't want to. So there you go.
So dumb question.
Yeah.
What caused Match Frame to fold?
Well, a lot of things. The interesting, you know, the reason that there's an Alpha Dogs is because back in the late 90s, mid 90s, whenever it was that Avid came out with the Avid Symphony, that was the first system that could do uncompressed standard definition in a computer. So this was a big deal. And
so you were doing online instead of offline?
Exactly, onlining in it, and you know, they had a really nice color corrector in it and all this, which that had been a dark area. Color correction had been, you went to Da Vinci, and there were very few people who knew anything about it. It was a black art world and all that. And so all of these things, you know, I looked at this and I was like, okay, this world's going to change, and it's going to change quick. And I, you know, for sort of a business, because I always look historically to pick business models and try to figure out where things are going. I mean, Philip and I both do that a lot. But I looked at, you know, what happened to desktop publishing. So back when, you know, I used to run my dad's lock shop back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. And if I wanted to make a flyer to mail out to customers, you'd go to a print shop, and then you had to have a graphic artist, you know, do a mock-up for you, and then if you like, you don't like, and there's gonna be changes, then they do it. And all these steps cost a lot of money. The artists had to keep making changes. And then when they finally got it locked down, then they would go to make a master and run off copies from it. It was a very expensive process.
Yes, it all involved a lot of rulers and blades, cutting things out.
Yes, exactly, all that.
Rubbing of letraset.
Yes. And so along comes Mac, and with the desktop publishing, and it was like, poof, that industry's gone.
Mac plus laser printer.
Yes. So, and now remember, this is, you know, 90s, late 90s, I'm looking at this, and so what happened? What was the fallout from that? And the fallout was, in the late 90s, if you wanted to make a flyer for your kid's birthday, you did it at home on your computer. Right. If you want to make a flyer for a business, you hired a designer to make you the flyer. You didn't go to a print shop anymore. They were out of there. The hardware part of it was gone. But you still would pay for the professional. So when I thought about that, I was like, you know what, I'll always work, but I couldn't see big post houses surviving. I couldn't see a match frame that was built on, you're paying to come in and use this gear, you're going to pay us a lot of money per hour because we've invested a ton of money into this. So I could, you know, it was easy to extrapolate out, this was not going to last. Right. So that's ultimately what killed them. But they could have adapted, but it was a three-way partnership, and the one guy who was smart enough to and wanted to adapt, the other 2/3 of the partnership did not want to. Yeah, he eventually got out of it, fortunately, but the rest of them were not smart enough to do that.
That's Howard.
Interesting.
That's Howard Brock, yes.
Okay.
So he got out, but and then, you know, there was a lot of funny stuff going on. I won't mention the name of the guy who actually ran into the ground, but it was really ugly at the end. Okay. And they basically, one Wednesday, called in all the employees that were having a big meeting at 5 o'clock, and they all come in and they go, you have an hour to get all your stuff out of here, goodbye.
Ouch. Oh.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brutal.
I was reading today that supposedly Steve Jobs did a keynote at NAB, and he got up and told all of these broadcasters, all of your expensive equipment is going to get replaced with computers. And he pissed off a lot of people.
Yeah, they don't want to hear it. I mean, I mean, what I wanted to do, it's interesting, at MatchFrame, what I wanted to do is, you know, when I looked at this, I said, all right, I'll buy my own Symphony. I'll basically four-wall a room at MatchFrame. As far as clients are concerned, I just work for MatchFrame. So MatchFrame could just say it's, you know, I mean, for them, it keeps sort of the same business model going. Okay. They don't have to invest in the gear, and I'm just making money off of the room, you know? No, we'll never do that. Of course, they did end up doing that with some guys later on, years later after I was gone. But so they weren't going to do that. And so it's a weird thing, you know, when you're talking about changing your entire life, which is what I was talking about doing, going off and starting my own business. And on any given day, you know, I would go between, you know, I can't do this, that's crazy, you know? And then I have to do it. I have to do it. And it's just like, for months and months and months I was like that, until I finally, pulled the trigger and said, all right, forget it. I got to do this thing. And it was interesting. I was going to get one system and put it in my home in a room. Except you can't really do that in broadcast television, which is what I'm delivering, because if my system crashes, I can't turn to the client and go, oh well, I have to wait until I get another system in a couple of days, and then we'll re-digitize everything. No, we have to be on air in 2 days. So I have to have redundancy. I had to have two basically of anything that we did. I had to have at least two of. And so that all of a sudden went from me just having one little room to what became Alpha Dogs. But it was always what was different between what we were doing and what the big post models were. Is we always sold talent. We'll get your show done. Don't worry about what we did. My job is to figure out how to do it, the cheapest way possible without sacrificing quality. So, we're always on cutting edge of where can we cut corners without sacrificing quality. It's a tricky balance, but.
And I came at it from the exact opposite direction. I was always at the most cost-effective end of production. And then I realized that, 3/4 inch and, tube cameras, and then eventually, chip cameras and the like, we were really selling access to technology.
Right.
And I'm looking at what's coming out of the consumer area. It's like, oh, there's a consumer switcher that's got a frame store in it that I can switch two sources without having to have them synchronized up. Holy dooly, I'm in trouble selling. Anyone who's basically selling access to tools, is in trouble. It's the talent. And I realized from that point on, we're about what we could deliver for you, not about the technology that we use to deliver it.
Exactly, yes, exactly. So it's the same concept. That's why we're both still doing it.
We both saw the writing on the wall, and we're prepared to change our business because of it. Whereas most people, even if they see the writing on the wall, they wished it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and that's the thing. You pick you either bury your head in the sand or you do something. What's frustrating for me now is I've always been able to sort of, extrapolate out from the past what's going to happen in the future. Right. I really am having a hard time going forward from here, just in regards to our industry and media and all that, because there's no precedent for where we are right now in history.
It's a shame, because my next question was going to be, what's going to happen in the future?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no precedent. Okay, so I've thought about this a lot, and I think the scariest part of all of this is that if you go back more than 150 years ago, for the entire rest of the history of mankind, if you wanted to perform, or because you obviously you couldn't have a movie, you would go and perform plays. So you're an actor, or you want to direct plays, or you're a playwright, whatever. You went from town to town and did your performances and hoped you could get enough food to survive. The term starving artist was every artist, unless you were one of those lucky guys who had a patron. Yeah. That was it. Everybody was a starving artist. So this weird thing happened with the invention of moving pictures, was that you could record the guy's performance once, and then he could get paid for it as it played all around the world over and over and over again. So it was that was a new thing that hadn't been done before. I mean, other than writing a book, that was been.
Like technology always does. Now there were one talented or super talented person who got recorded and spread around the world, but everyone else who has average talent no longer has a job, because we're just all watching the good guy on film.
Right.
So, local theatre, local presentations, local performance all went, and we lost jobs.
Yes, exactly. So, but what happened was it was so expensive. It is a very expensive medium, and very difficult, that it was a closed system. So it was very hard to get into. You had studios, because somebody had to invest a ton of money in the gear and making the distribution prints and having the theaters to get them in. All of that, there was an infrastructure, advertising, and the entire industry that built up around that. Yes. And then television, very similar thing, built up around this huge expense to get that information out there, to broadcast your signals or whatever. So there was. It was a small field, so you could still make a ton of money. Everybody working in the industry made a ton of money. Well, now the production tools are no longer exclusive. I'm carrying a 4K camera in my pocket. It's my phone. Yes. I can edit on my computer at home or on my phone. Yeah. And most importantly, the entire distribution model is throw it up on YouTube. It's free, and everybody in the world can see it. So The difference is you can now broadcast everybody, but you now have to try to figure out how to make money, off of that, where nobody wants to pay for anything. So we're kind of back to starving artists again, where instead of, it's not an exclusive area anymore, which kept the rates up. It's now everybody can make stuff, so lots of people are doing it, and YouTube is the perfect phenomenon of that. Right. You see, the kids, if you watch the kids, I mean, that's Vines, YouTube, etc. That's where a lot of their time is spent. The market for highly polished production skill sets is diminishing, and those are the only areas you can make a lot of money.
There's a really small number of people making a lot of money on YouTube. But it's
very small.
Really tiny.
Exactly. That's probably going to change a bit where they don't make as much eventually. I mean, as more people figure it out, and they make money because so many viewers go to that one person. And some of those, you look at them and you're like, what's going on here?
Oh, yeah, I'm a different generation. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
And it's always that entertainment changes. Well, in fact, one of the interesting things that I'm noticing with the food show that we're cutting is that I'm having to cut a lot faster than I would have, say, 10 years ago when I really last did a lot of production. Mm-hmm. You watch, nearly 20-year-old food show, with two fat ladies out of the UK. So the UK's tend to be slower paced anyway.
Yeah.
But a 15 to 20 second shot is not unusual. The average cutting pace is probably about 7 or 8 seconds.
Yeah.
You go to something modern, and then we're not even talking about like the US version of MasterChef, but even the British version of MasterChef. It's 2 to 3 seconds per shot average, and that's pretty consistent. I've been seeing across all the production that I bother to stop and count. Mm-hmm. It's that much faster.
Maybe it had to be slower because they were looking at counters and having to go back 5 frames and do all of that.
When an edit is 20, yeah.
There definitely is a different aesthetic.
Enjoy, gentlemen.
Thank you. Remember back in... What the heck is that?
That is a chicken pot pie.
That's a huge...
Yeah, but it's a big pastry case over a not quite so big pie.
Is that onion soup? French onion soup?
That is a mini chicken pot pie.
That's insane. You're going to eat that whole thing?
Brown pepper?
No, thank you. You're going to eat that whole thing?
There's a very good chance.
Really?
Yeah, it's not that huge.
This is the size of this is the size of a basketball.
It is about the size of a basketball. Not as high, but yeah. It's a good pot pie. I've had it here before. And chicken pot pie is an interesting thing to cook because it's, like a lot of pies, it's a pastry case.
Yeah. Right.
And then it's the real trick with any sort of pie is what goes into the pie. You need quality pastry, but you also need a good filling, and they get both right here. You see, it's not really that big.
Oh, a lot of crust.
The crust goes a lot further out than the pie does.
Okay.
So it's
It's meant to be spectacular.
You see the edge of the plate. All right.
That's still significant.
Yeah.
And here I'm trying to be good, eating healthy food.
It's something that has come up in the lunch conversations is, I feel that I have to, because we're on camera, I feel that I have to eat something healthy. Not what I normally would choose.
No, I have to choose my calories, and if I have to choose between this or having a couple nice beers later on, and it's really hot out here right now, and I'll go for the beers later on. I'm going to be good now, bad later. That's why summer is brutal for me, because most of the year I'll drink wine, but in the summer when it's hot, it's like, it's going to be beer, right? And beer is just like deadly. I used to always say beer is bread. It's liquid bread.
It is.
Yeah, it probably is too. It's more food.
Studies have shown that beer will put on the beer belly, but wine will not, and spirits will not. It's because it's the wheat.
But it's so good on a hot day.
I haven't always been the biggest beer aficionado, but on a hot day, when you want something that isn't sweet.
Exactly. Yep. And refreshing, and yeah.
That chicken pot pie is really good.
It's really hard to get drunk on beer because I spend too much time running off to the restroom.
Yeah.
There's not enough drinking time.
There was this old guy that used to work for my dad at his lock shop. And he had great sayings, and one of them was, you can't get drunk on beer. He'd always start drinking about 2 in the afternoon while he was working. Michelob was his thing. big Michelob drinker. But he's, no, you can't get drunk on beer.
Well, traditionally beer was the safe drink. In the Middle Ages, you couldn't drink water because it was extremely unsafe. So you had to either drink a very mild beer or wine or die. The thing that's nice about multi-camera shoots, it's so much easier to do an edit.
Oh, yeah.
You've always got something else to cut to.
Well, that's why the panel, in the editor's lounge panels that we shoot, I made them put cameras up front, get audience shots.
Right.
So I have something to cover them. In a perfect world, we'd have 5 cameras, so that one for each person on the panel. They'd have their own isolated camera. And then, medium shot, wide shot. Or we shot, with the 4K camera last time. We used the 4K camera as a master back there, plus the other cameras, Idea being, you can push in on the 4K, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Something that somebody was dead against.
It's soft. They hadn't perfectly focused the camera, it was up above, so they didn't know.
Oh dear.
Best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah, I've been known to push these GoPros into about 220%. But 200% is 1:1 for standard for HD, because it's quad HD. And so you can push in 210, 220%. At 220, it's starting to look a little soft.
You can see, okay.
I can see it, but in the context of what I'm doing, I don't think anyone would really notice it.
Yeah.
Now, if it was a broadcast show, yes.
But when you start off soft, then try to push in. Good luck. So I haven't been against 4K origination. I'm against,
No, this guy was.
No, I wasn't.
not against origination, just the entire rest of the process.
Well, and the need for it.
Yeah, well, in the need, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with 4K, but why did we need more pixels when we don't have great pixels? The thing I've said repeatedly in a Terrence and Phillips show is, give us better pixels, not just more pixels.
Exactly.
We are going to get that with HDR.
Yes, finally.
And it certainly makes sense to shoot 4K, but do we need to broadcast 4K? And who is going to be watching that?
Yeah.
And where are they going to get these enormous living rooms?
But that's what the TV manufacturers, all the push behind 4K has been for the home market to sell TVs.
Because we didn't buy enough 3D TVs, so they had to go into the next thing.
Precisely.
That is exactly what it is. They're trying to change the business model from you buy a TV every 15 years to you buy one every 2 years. That's not how people buy TVs. They think of it like their refrigerator, not their phone.
Do you think overall that this democratization is a good thing or a bad thing? That more people have access to the tools of production, more people who have an idea can make it. In your world, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or just a thing?
Yeah, I would say it's easier to go thing because I can see the pluses and the minuses. Right. The pluses are that now everybody can communicate to everybody in the world. The minuses are, if everybody in a room gets up and all talks at once, you don't hear anything. So what? How do you? The studios and the networks. In spite of whatever you may think of them or what their choices were, they were a filter. So 500 people have a great idea for a TV show. They throw them all out. And somebody in the network has to go, okay, we'll take a chance on this one and this one and this one, And their job lives and dies based on whether they hit it right or not. Right. But those 490 shows that never should have seen the light of the day didn't, Now, they do, but, YouTube is an example of that. So
if we back up a little bit and think about the comparison with desktop publishing. So desktop publishing wasn't only about producing books and magazines. Most printing that happened was flyers and other little bits of communication.
Right. Receipt books.
Yes, whatever. So maybe video is the same. Most video production isn't movies and television shows and television commercials. Most video production is more general communication, the equivalent of flyers and posters and whatever.
Oh, I agree. That's, Philip's contention that it's the new literacy.
The new literacy.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
I agree, but the problem is now let's go to books. This is another model I looked at historically for that. Okay. You wrote a book. You want to, get it out there. You submitted it to a bunch of publishers. If one of them saw promise in it, decided they'd go for it, they make you an offer and you go, okay. They put their editor on it who works with you and refines it, polishes it, makes it better.
Takes all the sense of voice and personality out of it.
Then they spent the money to print a bunch of the books, to get them out there in the distribution through bookstores and whatnot. They spent the money on PR to promote the whole thing.
Yes.
That's what you did. So the publishers acted as filters from the thousands of books that should never have been made. Now you can throw it up on Amazon. Boom, you can everybody can self-publish.
Yeah.
But who helps you refine it, make it better? Who helps you promote it? How do you, stand out from the other millions of books up there on Amazon that nobody's going to see? So now you have to become an expert in all those fields instead of having the professionals.
By and large, you need to become a social media expert.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, because that's how we point. I want to take it back a little bit though. I mean, the YouTube and this fame thing where people can get some exposure but not necessarily make money. Well, the entirety of the television model was based on exposing people to things so that you'll be sold something else. In the same way the bands have never made money from their recording contracts, they make money from the live venue performances and the merchandising. Nobody's making money from the production per se, but if you can find something else to sell 1,000 people that works out to be $100 net for you per year, you're good.
Right.
And I've made much more money off self-published books than I ever was going to make out of a major publisher, because the advances have gone from, okay, that's a reasonable amount of money for the amount of work that's going to get into it, but we'll never see any more.
Right.
To now, I'm sorry, I wouldn't even go out. I wouldn't even spend the weekend on it for that money.
Right.
An advance has gone from, I think the first time I ever spoke to a publisher, the advance was in the 13 grand mark, and we split it across 2 authors. That was a long time ago. The last offers I'm hearing from that exact same publisher are 2 to 3 grand per book advance. Wow. Now a book is a couple of 100 hours minimum. I mean, even if the most insane I've ever done was the Concrete Metadata Foundation to a Final Cut Pro 10, which I did in the last 4 days before Final Cut was released. Today, it's a fairly small book at 60 pages, and I did have to work mostly through the night, most of those 4 days. I averaged 4 hours sleep. But it was write the content, publish it, do the cover design, upload it to CreateSpace so that the day that Final Cut was released, it was available as a PDF from me or as a on-demand ordered book from Amazon. The major publishers were coming out in August and September after Final Cut 10's release. Right. I was out in June, exactly 1 week after Final Cut 10. You can't, this is the 2 sides of this conversation.
Right.
And I made more money from that than I would have, than those advances would have been.
The advances are not now $3,000 and you don't get anything more, are they?
Only if you sell beyond your advance.
Yeah. Certain number of books.
And basically the books in our industry never sell more than 5,000 copies. Even through the best publisher, that's their first print run. That's theoretically what the advance was based on. What you would get from that run.
But what you're talking about is not a normal situation. It's a niche market, and you're a well-known expert in that niche market. So with a social network built in that niche market to promote it. If I'm just some person at home and I've just written a dramatic novel that I think is the greatest thing ever, it's probably never going to get seen, even if I self-publish it on Amazon, but it's, So that's the thing I'm talking about, is like, that if you say, hey, I want to go read some really cool action book, drama, whatever, how do you find that now? I mean, it's going to be, if you go to Amazon to look for the book, the ones that pop up are going to be the ones that have heavy duty PR campaigns behind them and have built up so that they and probably pay advertising dollars to Amazon on the side to get pushed up to the top of the searches, etc. Those are the ones you're going to see, so that's where you go. All those other people writing the books just don't get out there, and that may be a good thing in the long run, because that's traditionally what's happened. You still, you're not going to see, the kid down the street making his first movie on his iPhone. You're not going to see that in the theater, nationally released. Odds are.
And that's probably for the best.
There is one out right now. Saw it on iPhones. Mm-hmm. It follows a couple transvestite hookers, and it's got a theatrical release. But I think that guy had another movie he'd done before.
Yeah. That was shown at Sundance, wasn't it?
Yeah, it ended up at Sundance. But
My understanding is that he had done a movie before but couldn't get this one up. Couldn't get it financed, and so he just decided to shoot it
do it on his own.
with what he had. And it was product that suited the approach. In that he wasn't working with acting talent, he wasn't doing, he wanted to do fairly cinema verite on the street, and it was shot where these girls were.
And somebody who owned a diner had said that he was allowed to film there as long as it wasn't obvious that they were filming there. So their iPhones were perfect.
But again, I'm surprised that in every restaurant we've been into, there's been absolutely zero pushback. But partly because we're completely non-intrusive to the rest of the restaurant, so we're not making the meal worse for the people at the table over there or behind us or anywhere else. But I guess in my somewhat sensitive nature, wondered if we would get pushback. Oh no, you can't shoot on our premises without permission from, headquarters.
Right. Well, I would not recommend trying to do this in Apple's cafeteria.
We may get some pushback there, you're right.
That's funny.
Although there's nothing proprietary in the cafeteria.
Doesn't matter.
Yes, but to get into Apple, you have to leave your cameras at the door, remember?
That's my point, is that their policy is one that if they saw this, they'd immediately go, yep, you gotta kill it. Restaurants now, they don't care.
No, there was one waitress said, "Hello, GoPro guys, what do you want?"
And that probably helps too. Everybody knows what the GoPro is now.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
And the grill up in San Jose, which is the upmarket version of the Daily Grill, just means another $10 on everything in the bill. They said, "So what's going on? What are you doing?" And so, wait staff get curious. So what are you doing? Why you set up cameras and things in our restaurant?
But then when you told them what you're doing, they said it's all fine?
Yeah, nobody. There's more curiosity than no manager ever came by. It was just the wait staff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, are you logging?
Yeah.
Well.
Of course.
Definitely the iPhone version of the logger is my favorite format because it doesn't take up too much room. You can do it one-handed if you had to, which I don't know. It just sort of, for me, it's the most comfortable.
Now that's working because you're getting the network, you're getting the video off the...
No, the iOS is completely network independent. Once you log in, you download all of your current status of your account. So all of your events, all of your keywords are on your phone. You can log them without any connection to the network. And when you're finished, you just upload them to the network, and it's any time you need a connection to the network.
So they're just working, the keywords are working basically time of day?
Yeah.
Because the iPhone knows what time it is.
How about the heroes?
As soon as the app connects, it updates it to current UTC.
Okay.
So that camera is current UTC.
So they end up being more accurate than your camera that you have to set manually.
Other than an iPhone. Or Android camera, of course. Yeah, Lumberjack grew up a lot in the year that we spent testing it before we released it. A lot of things we realised we needed that had never been planned. In the limited circumstances we first envisioned it, it's like, okay, now we want to take it from something for Solar Odyssey into something that can be used by anyone. And prototyping takes work. And it became very obvious that the network connection issue was much more of an issue than we thought it was.
So if you want to add right now a specific node or something to that, you have to go and type it in?
There's a little plus button that pops up a field. The little keyboard pops up.
What about can you do it verbally?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I can. Because it's a standard NS text field, so it inherits everything that Apple gives you.
Okay, because that's what you'd want. If you're there on a reality show and you're logging, you go, okay, they're having a fight in the kitchen, or whatever.
You just have fight and kitchen already programmed.
Well, but you don't know what's going to happen. His point is, you don't.
That's why you've got back time.
It's a reality TV show. There's going to be a fight in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay, fight in the bathroom.
Well, you'd have keywords in activity for all the things that you were interested in. You'd have keywords in location for all the locations you're interested in. And then in Final Cut 10, you can simply say, I want a smart collection of kitchen and fight. So everything's been like with both is going to come up in that smart. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. What do you think has been the most significant technology change in your career so far?
Wow. The most significant, I'd say the most significant was digitizing video, which led to NLEs and eventually the digital cameras, et cetera, that we have now. And, unfortunately, the death of film. I'm a film guy, can't help it. That's, and led, I would say that's the biggest thing. And it also has led to, being able to distribute over the internet and everything else. So once you digitize the image,
Those two things together, the digitization of the content and the internet with its suddenly improvement over the last decade particularly.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but you couldn't have had one without the other.
Absolutely.
So they kind of go, but impact-wise, overall, the digitizing, because it changed everything. It took us out of the film universe. It changed the cameras. We can do this now, which has never been an option before. That would be the biggest.
Those early days of having an NLE, I don't think there was much of a hint that we would have ended up with digital cameras.
No.
No, until we got to DV, although it was still tape. The fact that all you were doing was a copy from the tape to the to the local hard drive. There's no and a rewrap in the case of Apple's devices, but mostly it was the same bits that were on the tape and the bits that you're editing with without any extra step in between, which was nice.
Digibeta, because that was when cameras started going digitally. So yeah.
What about going forward? What do you think will be the most significant change you expect to see before you?
It's hard for me to give you a positive one. I think we're in a world of hurt right now, I've tried to drive this conversation as many times as I can because it's what we should be talking about in this country, actually in the world right now. The promise of automation was always, if you go back to the science fiction movies from the past, everybody's sitting around sipping drinks and the robots are serving you and it's all great, But we're getting to that point where the robots are going to be serving us and doing everything for us. But what do all those people do now that are unemployed?
Yes.
And we haven't talked about it. You can't, it's not in human nature, or in nature, I guess, in general, but certainly not in human nature to be perfectly happy just sitting there being served all day long. There was a...
Isn't that
animated...
Wall-E?
Yeah. That's...
Where they're floating around on the chairs, and they lost their bone structure.
Right. So, Philip and I have talked about this a lot. If you do anything that's repetitive in any way, shape, or form, you're going to be replaced by technology. It's just time, So, what's left? There's really not.
I think I mentioned this book in the Terrence and Philip show that we recorded recently, but I'm reading it where it's essentially automation, Asia, and abundance are what's killing all those good middle-class jobs. Knowledge workers, fine, but those knowledge workers can be just as easily in India or Bangladesh or Europe somewhere, answering your call when you ring up the bank or the cable company.
Well, and that's getting automated more and more out of existence because AI is going to, that's it.
Jerry Hoffman wants to automate that out of existence, largely. So I don't know where the future goes, both societally and technologically.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, again, you just look at historical models, and I can't see it being anywhere than like the Middle Ages, where you have a couple royalty, and then everybody else is poor. You're all slaves underneath. Isn't it? That's because there's not going to be middle class anymore, and the middle class is, that's one of the big advantages that came, well, certainly from the formation of this country and then spread throughout the world, and now it's going away. We've gone past that point, and because technology is replacing it. And people are not talking about what are you going to do about that. Okay, you can only have so many doctors and physicists and computer code writers, etc. Because the average...
Even that one's not safe because computers are increasingly writing their own code.
Well, that's true. But if you look at, you can stay ahead of that curve constantly reinventing yourself. You're intelligent. by definition, half of the population is below average intelligence, by definition. You can teach them to screw on lug nuts all day and create middle-class jobs out of building cars. That's done. That's over. So what do you do with all those people? Nobody's talking about that. The politicians get up and go, "Oh, I'm going to be the guy who creates more jobs." Well, really? How? Show me. What exactly is your plan for actually doing it? Well, we'll lower taxes. Oh, we'll raise taxes. No, neither of those are going to create jobs.
No. In fact, the sad truth is that the government has very little control over the economy at all.
None at all. None at all.
So any politician that's trying to claim that they can control the economy is probably lying, but
Yes.
if a politician is talking, they're probably lying.
It sort of goes hand in hand, doesn't it?
How do you know a politician is lying?
His mouth's open. That's right.
His lips are moving, yeah.
And in the early days of computers, you could sort of see, oh yeah, they were able to do mathematical calculations. But you could say, yeah, but they can't do voice synthesis. And then it's not long before that happens. So yeah, well, they can speak, but they can't really understand what you say. And then we get that, our phone does that now.
Right.
And then it's like, yeah, but they can't really recognize faces. And we're running out of, yeah, but they can't really.
Well, we already know that there are technologies that will take the speech and convert it to text. There are technologies that will take the text and extract keywords from it.
Right.
There are technologies that will read emotion in those shots. There are technologies that will tell you what the content of that shot includes. At that point, the sorts of algorithms that Greg and I have worked on over the last 6 or 7 years for then taking that and assembling something that's at least a starting point for an editor, or for an awful lot of production, probably will get you to the point where you're done.
Right.
So it means there's a whole bunch of things that, we could never get a computer to automate that. We have to rely on people. They all start disappearing.
Yeah.
They are disappearing. They will continue to disappear. It's,
Exactly.
That is really scary.
Yes.
I had never thought about that. It's really scary.
Sorry. But it's a conversation that everybody should be having, because it's going to be social chaos at some point here. I mean, we're starting to see bits of it, with rioting and whatnot, because we're having this widening income gap that is carrying through.
So how then do you deal with change personally? How do you adapt as these things constantly change around you?
That's a really good question. I think certainly I would be more concerned about this if I was 20 right now, as opposed to on the back end of my career. If I was starting out, I'd be going, what, maybe you could be an attorney. It'll probably be a while before they ever automate attorneys out of existence, because they'll just keep writing laws to keep it from happening. Right. So there's that. But other than that, I don't know what else you could be. Even doctors will be replaced eventually.
Yeah, not so much in terms of choosing a career that's likely to last, but as that career changes, how do you say, look, the training business that we were in is now so crowded that we don't really have an opportunity there anymore. Let's go and do a radio show.
Well, that's the biggest difference, is that you can't be married to whatever it is you're doing. That's the difference. You have to be willing to change. I mean, you and I both are just automatically willing to change. A lot of people are not, you know?
Yeah. I think in NLP terms, we'd be defined as towards the future. That we're looking to embrace the future, whereas a lot of people are really away from
holding on to the past.
Yeah, they don't really want to embrace the future.
Right.
But historically, if you were a person who was a blacksmith, and your father was a blacksmith, and your grandfather was a blacksmith, you could go to your grandfather and you could ask him things and learn from him, and his circumstances were the same over whatever 3 generations. You can't do that now.
No, it's done.
My dad has no idea what I do.
Exactly.
He comes to me with computer questions and he's embarrassed about it and I say, look, I don't know, ask my niece, because...
And that's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the rate of change is insane. It's astronomical. And I mean, you just, again, 150 years ago, state of the art was a steam train. That was a big deal. That changed a lot. It allowed us to get across the country rapidly. The telegraph, there was Pony Express, which only lasted about a year, and then it was put out of business by telegraph, as a rapid form of communication. That's like 150 years ago. And in the last 10 years, look what we've gone to.
Yeah.
You know, so how do I predict where we're going to be in 10 years? I mean, California, we're going to spend, you know, probably it's going to be 100 billion by the time we're done. They're saying about 80 billion now on this train, a bullet train from LA to San Francisco that nobody's going to ride, right? At best, it's going to be done by 2030. We'll be teleporting by then, most likely. I mean,
At least have driverless cars.
exactly. I mean, technology. Well, yeah, we have driverless cars coming in already. So the technological changes are, you know, happening so fast and furious. How you could spend that amount of money putting in ancient technology, you know, again, for something that people don't really need.
In the 1960s when Japan did it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
1970s and 80s when Europe did it.
of course, we could put that money into desalination plants all up and down the coast, and we would never have a drought problem ever again in California. That would be logical. And I guess whoever owns all that land they're going to run the trains through between here and San Francisco wouldn't be making all the money they're going to be making off of this deal. So yeah, I can see where that doesn't help, right? I don't know. Those are the kind of things. If you look at where we're going to be in 20 years in California, water is going to be really important across the state, right? So that's what we should be. Well, and across the world, yeah. I mean, if we took that 80 billion and said, let's just start building desalination plants, the amount of money in research that would go into everything, we'd get technology we could sell to the rest of the world. Or better yet, just take, okay, it's going to be $80 billion. We'll take 1/10 of that, $8 billion, right? And we'll put it up as a prize, and we'll come up with whatever your needs are. You know, it has to use this amount, you know, this small amount of energy, and it can only have this amount of waste to produce this much clean water from the ocean. $8 billion to the first person who gives it to us.
Well, thank you, Terry, for coming to lunch with us. We appreciate it. You can get more information on Terry from alphadogs.tv and, of course, editorslounge.com.